Welcome or welcome back, my freaks and geeks. Today's video, we're going to be talking about every parent's worst nightmare. This is the unsolved case of the Watcher. As always, grab some snacks, turn off the lights, and let's get into it. In June 2014, Maria and Derek Broaddus were getting ready to move into 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey, with their 3 children. 657 Boulevard was considered the family's dream home. Three days after completing the sale, a letter arrived in the mailbox addressed to, quote, the new owner, end quote, in, quote, thick, clunky letters, end quote. The typed letter read, quote, dearest new neighbor of 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. As it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I'm in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one. Look at any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard. At all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Do you have children? I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I've counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. End quote. The author signed it as The Watcher, cursive font. After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family had reached out to the previous owners, a couple named John and Andrea Woods. The Woods family told them that they had only received 1 letter from the Watcher in the 23 years that they have lived at 657 Boulevard, but since it happened days before they had moved out, they discarded the letter without much concern. After talking to the Woods family, the 2 families went to the police and told them what happened. The police had instructed them to keep quiet about the Watcher because their neighbors were now suspects. 2 weeks later, while the Broaddus still haven't moved in, a second letter had arrived. This letter included information like their surname, which is Albert, but it was misspelled, the children's birth order, and the children's nicknames. It had also referenced seeing their daughter painting in the enclosed porch space, asking, quote, is she the artist in the family? End quote. The letter continued to say, quote, it has been years since the young blood rolled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedroom facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. End quote. After receiving this letter, Maria and Derek had stopped bringing the children to the house, and they had put a pause on the plans to move in. This caused their 3rd letter to read, quote, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. End quote. After a year investigating, there were no leads. This had put stress on the family, and it caused depression in Derek and post-traumatic stress disorder in Maria. They were both afflicted with paranoia as well. 6 months after the arrival of the letters, the Broadduses have decided to sell the house, but they were not able to due to the rumors that surrounded the home. The Broadduses had also attempted to sue the Woods for not disclosing the threatening letters that they had received, but the judge threw out the case because there was no evidence that they had intentionally hidden the letters and did not believe that this was a genuine threat. The Broadduses had also considered selling the house to a developer who would be able to tear the house down and split it into 2 plots. But the plots were both 3 feet too small for the mandated size of the neighborhood, so it could not be done. The Broadduses had tried to appeal this to the neighborhood planning board. The judges had unanimously rejected the decision, so the house remained 1 plot. It was then noticed that in 2018, the same board had approved splitting up a different lot near the house, and that the lot required a larger exemption than what the Broadduses had requested. Christmas of 2015, the families had expressed their anger at the Broadduses' decision to try and split the property, were subject to threatening letters that signed, quote, friends of the Broaddus family, end quote. In the spring of 2016, about 2 years after the first letter had arrived, the Broadduses had found a family that was willing to rent the home from them, but on the condition that they could back out if a letter arrived. Within 2 weeks, another letter arrived, and was addressed to, quote, the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria, end quote. The letter read, quote, 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. As soldiers of the boulevard followed my orders to a T. key. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, perhaps something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you fall sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet, loved ones suddenly die, planes and cars and bicycles crash, bones break, you are despised by the house, and the Watcher won. End quote. Although the letter spooked attendants, they agreed to stay as long as more cameras were installed, and they were. While investigating the crime with no fingerprints, no digital trail, and no way to place a suspect at the scene of the crime was difficult for the police, but they were able to put together 3 suspects, one being a man nicknamed The Gamer, due to his love of playing violent video games, and a character called The Watcher. Second, a man named Michael Lanford, for his tendency to literally watch his neighbors, and lastly, the Broaddus family themselves, due to the suspicion of buyer's remorse and possible movie deals. In October 2016, a horror movie called The Watcher was released by Lifetime, despite a cease and desist order from the Broadduses, and after a bidding battle, Netflix won the rights to the story in 2018. In July of 2019, 657 Boulevard was finally sold for approximately $959,000, which was about $400,000 less than the price that the Broadduses bought it for. So far, there have been no reports of new owners receiving letters from the Watcher. Let's get more in depth of the theories. Theory 1. The Gamer. While Westfield police was surveilling the house one night, around 11 p.m., a car had stopped in front of the house. The car was then traced back to a young woman who lived in town nearby, while their boyfriend lived on the same block at 657 Boulevard. When questioned by the police, the woman had informed them that her boyfriend was into, quote, some really dark video games, end quote, which was possibly including a game where you played as a character referred to as the Watcher. When the Gamer had agreed to be questioned by the police, he never showed up to the interviews, but the police did not have enough evidence to force him to come in, so he was never questioned. Theory 2. Michael Lanford. This theory was brought forward by Derek Broaddus, who had suspected him after he and the rest of the family had attended a neighborhood barbecue after the arrival of the first letter. Michael had lived in the house next door with his 90-year-old mother and had done so since the 1960s. This is also the same time that the Watcher had claimed that his father had watched 657 Boulevard. Not only that, but since Michael's father had died about 12 years prior to the Broadduses moving in, this could also explain what the Watcher said that they had been watching for the better part of 2 decades. He was also known to spook neighbors by literally watching them, as he would walk through their backyards and would look through the windows. Due to the position of the houses, Michael would be able to see into the porch space where the Watcher had mentioned their daughter painting. The police had questioned him after the first letter, but he denied knowing anything. When the Broadduses were working with the police, they sent a letter to the Lanfords telling them that they would be demolishing the house in hopes of getting a response from the Watcher, but they got none. Another piece of evidence that casted doubt on this theory was the discovery of DNA on one of the letters. DNA belonged to a woman. This made the police consider Michael's sister, Abby, and they had compared the DNA from the letter with the DNA from a water bottle that Abby had used, but it was not a match. Shortly after the DNA test, the authorities had stopped investigating the possibility that any of the Lanfords could possibly be the Watcher, which meant dropping them as suspects. The Broadduses were never told why. Theory 3. The Broaddus family. Some locals have found it suspicious that over the years the Broadduses were able to move from a $315,000 house to a $770,000 house, and finally to a $1.3 million home with refinanced mortgages. They had also theorized that the Broadduses were experiencing buyer's remorse with the house and had turned to a quote-unquote desperate ploy to get out of financial trouble. Some were also wondering why the family had kept renovating the house even after deciding they won't move in. Major movie studios were also attempting to secure the rights to the story as well, and a large media deal could have been at the motivation for creating The Watcher. The 13 letters that were signed, quote, Friends of the Broaddus family, end quote, turned out to have been written by Derek. Despite his claims that he only sent them due to years of frustration and that he had not written the original letters, this drew suspicion. However, the psychological trauma that was experienced by the family was a strong contender against the theory, along with the fact that at the same time of sending the first letter, another family on the block had received a letter from the Watcher as well. The family, similar to the Woods, had lived in the house for years without problems, and throughout the letter, so if the Broadduses were attempting to make a movie deal or get out of their house, there would be no reason to send a letter to another house as well. This has been the case of The Watcher. Let me know what you guys think about this case. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.